Let me tell you about two people I used to work with. We'll call them Sarah and Miguel. They started at the same company on the same day in similar roles, making the same salary, about $52,000 a year. Both were in their late 20s, both had student loans, both rented apartments in the same part of town. If you looked at their lives from the outside, you'd think they were on identical paths. 10 years later, their financial situations looked completely different. Sarah had over $180,000 in investment accounts and was genuinely considering early retirement options. Miguel had about $12,000 saved and was still living paycheck to paycheck, wondering where all the time went. This isn't a story about one person being smart and the other being careless. It's not about sacrifice versus indulgence, and it's definitely not about one of them getting lucky. It's about something much quieter than that. In this video, I want to walk you through what actually happened between these two people, because understanding the difference might be one of the most valuable things you learn about money this year. In their first year, Sarah and Miguel lived remarkably similar lives. They both contributed the minimum to get their employer's 401k match, 3% of their salary. That was about $130 a month. Their HR rep had emphasized it during onboarding, so they both signed up. Free money, right? They both had car payments, student loans, and credit card debt from college. They both spent money on normal things: dinners with friends, occasional travel, streaming subscriptions, coffee, clothes. Neither was especially frugal or especially extravagant. The difference started small, so small it was barely noticeable. Sarah had read something somewhere about how starting to invest early mattered more than she'd realized. She didn't fully understand it, but it stuck with her. So she decided to do one additional thing. She set up an automatic transfer of $200 a month into a low-cost index fund through a regular investment account. It felt manageable. Not easy exactly, but doable. Some months it meant saying no to things she wanted, but it wasn't dramatic. It was just there, automatic. Every month, Miguel thought about doing something similar. He'd read the same kinds of articles, but there was always something else that felt more urgent. A car repair, a trip he'd been planning, paying down his credit card a bit faster. The idea of investing felt like something he'd get to later, once things settled down. For the next few years, not much changed on the surface. Sarah kept her automatic investments going, $200 a month, every month. She increased her 401k contribution by 1% each year when she got her annual raise, so small she barely noticed it in her paycheck. Miguel kept meaning to start. Every January he'd think, this is the year I'll get serious about investing, but life kept happening. His rent went up. He financed a nicer car when his old one died. He took on a small personal loan to help a family member. Nothing catastrophic, just life. By year 5, here's where they stood. Sarah had been putting away about $330 a month total between her 401k and her index fund. Over 5 years, that was roughly $20,000 of her own money. But her accounts showed about $24,500. The extra $4,500 came from market growth and her employer match. Miguel had his 401k with the 3% match, which had grown to about $11,000, but he hadn't started any additional investing. He told himself he'd start once he paid off his credit card, which kept hovering around a $5,000 balance. If this way of explaining money is helpful at all, you should subscribe. I make videos like these to help people understand finances and build long-term freedom. Now at this point, Sarah had about $13,000 more than Miguel. That's real money, but it's not life-changing. Not yet. This is where things started to diverge in a way that became impossible to ignore. Sarah kept going. Same routine. She increased her 401k contributions gradually as her salary grew. She kept the $200 a month going to her index fund and occasionally added extra when she got a bonus or tax refund. By year 10, she'd contributed about $55,000 of her own money, but her accounts showed over $180,000. Where did the other $125,000 come from? Some of it was employer match. But most of it was something else, something that had been working quietly in the background the entire time. Miguel, by year 10, had his 401k worth about $28,000. He'd finally started putting money into a separate investment account in year 8, after a friend convinced him. But he'd only been doing it for 2 years. He looked at Sarah's numbers and felt something between disbelief and regret. "How did you do that?" he asked her once. "I just kept going," she said. "I honestly didn't think about it that much." Here's what didn't make the difference. Sarah wasn't smarter about money than Miguel. She didn't have a finance degree. She didn't spend hours researching stocks or timing the market. She didn't get an inheritance or a windfall. Miguel wasn't irresponsible. He wasn't frivolous. He didn't make terrible decisions. He worked hard. He paid his bills. He was doing what most people do. The difference came down to 2 things. First, Sarah started earlier, not by much, just a few years. But in investing, starting earlier matters more than almost anything else. Second, Sarah was consistent. She didn't invest a lot. She just invested regularly, month after month, year after year, even when it didn't feel like it was making a difference. Miguel intended to be consistent, but intention without a system just becomes something you wish you'd done. Sarah automated her investing. The money left her account before she saw it. She didn't have to decide every month whether to invest. She didn't have to resist temptation. She didn't have to be disciplined. She just had to set it up once and let it run. Miguel waited for the right time, for things to feel more settled, for his income to be higher, for his debt to be gone, for confidence that he was ready. That moment never came, because there's always something. Life is always happening. There's never a perfect time. The lesson here isn't that Miguel failed. It's that the system matters more than the person. When you invest money, you earn returns. Sometimes those returns are positive, sometimes negative, but over long periods, the market tends to grow. What most people miss is that growth doesn't just apply to the money you put in. It applies to everything already in the account, including past growth. The longer it runs, the more powerful it becomes. This is compound growth. It's not magic. It just feels like it, because the impact is invisible for years, and then suddenly it isn't. Sarah's first contributions had 10 full years to grow. Miguel's early contributions only had 2. Time mattered more than the amount. Sarah also invested the same amount every month, no matter what the market was doing. Some months, her money bought fewer shares. Some months, it bought more. Over time, it evened out automatically. This approach removes the pressure to time the market and reduces emotional decision-making. It's investing designed for people who don't want to obsess over charts or predictions. While Sarah's money was compounding, Miguel's money was quietly working against him. He carried a credit card balance for years, paying high interest. That money disappeared without building anything. And every year he waited to invest was a year his money couldn't grow. You don't feel that loss in the moment, but it compounds just like growth does, only in the wrong direction. This is why investing feels so slow at first. For years, Sarah's account didn't look impressive. She wondered if it was even worth it. Meanwhile, other people seemed to be enjoying their money more. Most people quit here. But growth isn't linear. It's exponential. And that means it feels like nothing is happening until suddenly everything is happening. Sarah's account grew far more in her last few years than it did in her first several combined. Miguel kept thinking he'd start once things were more settled. But the feeling of having extra money doesn't come from earning more. It comes from deciding what matters and building around it. Sarah treated investing like a bill. Miguel treated it like a luxury. By the time urgency arrived, catching up was much harder. Miguel can still build wealth. He is building wealth, but time is the one thing neither of them could get back. If you did just one of these things this year, you'd be in a different place a decade from now. You could automate a small monthly investment, something manageable, and let it run. You could increase your retirement contribution by 1% and never feel the difference. Or you could pay off high-interest debt and redirect that payment into investing instead of letting it disappear. You don't need to do all of them. You don't need to be perfect. Sarah and Miguel are both still at the same company. Miguel wishes he'd started sooner, not because he needed to understand everything, but because time mattered. The difference between them wasn't talent or luck. It was time and consistency. You don't need to be great at investing. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to start big. You just need to start, even if it's small, even if it feels insignificant. Thanks for watching.